Asher Krishon B'Mitzvotav. Mitzivanu La'asok B'divrei Torah. 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 Okay, I'm going to try not to yell because there are other people here, which means you guys, there's lots of chairs you could pull up and be closer. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It is our tradition when needed that we devote or dedicate our teachings to the elevation of a soul if someone is in their Shiva or Shloshim period. And so if I could ask everyone to rise very quickly to say Kaddish as we dedicate this teaching for Saba Bat. What was her father's name?
Yes.
Saba Bat. Yes?
Benjamin?
No. His what?
My father-in-law died, that's why I have
Oh, wow. Benjamin Ben who?
Ben Chaim HaKohen.
For Kohen and for Saba Bat, you don't remember her father's name, so Saba Bat Avraham. As just we quickly say Kaddish. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yomant yivrach v'yotev v'yom livim v'luteh. V'chayachon v'yom bachon v'chayeh nefo beit Yisrael v'agalav v'zman karev. Yehei shemei Rabbah v'rach le'olam v'lamei omayah. Yibarak v'yishvach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yidadar v'yidaleh v'yidallah shemei v'yidashah v'yidashah. Le'ela mikol bir chata v'shirata v'shpachata v'nefamata. Damirab yalma v'yimlu. Amen. Yehei Shalom al Rabba min Shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'emru. Amen. Osei Shalom v'shalom
You
v'yaseh.
say Shalom
Aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'emru. Amen. May their souls be elevated and receive joy through this. Okay, please be seated. A couple of business things. If you have not registered for the high holidays yet, please do so. Please register for the high holidays. Please be generous when you register so that we can make it to the high holidays. But please register as soon as possible. So the tickets are going to start going out the end of next week. They'll be back in clearance for that. So let's be clear on what this is. We are at war. We are always at war. Always. And I don't mean that as a, as a hyperbolic comment. What I mean that is we are always at war as human beings because we are always at war with our Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination. There's seats over here. I showered. What's the problem? Okay. So, can you guys, Corinne, can you hear okay? There's seats over here There's seats over here. And there's chairs over here too. You can bring in. And there's chairs there. So, on Rosh Hashanah, actually the whole month of Elul, we blow the shofar. The shofar has a double purpose. It is a call to war, period. It's a call to war externally when we go to war. You shall blow the shofar. It's a call to war during the month of preparing for Rosh Hashanah. And on Rosh Hashanah, it is a call to war with our evil inclination. So what is war? What is conflict in Judaism? We're going to go over a lot of different material. We'll go through it all. People are going to have different attitudes. And one of the things to recognize, as in all studying in Judaism, is that it's not about debate, it's about dialogue. It's not about, we can disagree without being disagreeable, okay? So wherever you happen to be on the political spectrum, wherever you happen to be on the spectrum of any war, does not mean that you're right, okay, or you're wrong. It only means the rabbi's always right. But beyond that, it's not about that. It's about a deeper place. That's what we're going to study. So, who would like to begin by reading the first part of the handout on war and peace? Loudly, so the recording can hear. Who wants to read?
All conflicts must be made for the sake of God, not for the sake of human concerns. Our earthly benefits cannot be the reason for our wars, only for the sake of heaven.
We do not get in a conflict, and that means a debate or a war, for our own benefit. Period. It is for the sake of heaven. Now that may mean preserving our lives. That's also for the sake of heaven. It may be mean for preserving Judaism. That's for the sake of heaven. It may mean for preserving any religion, because there's a war on religion going on in the world right now. I don't know how many of you realize that. There's a radical war going on against religion, period, and against both, especially, so there's a secularism against religion, and interestingly and weirdly, Islam is merged with secularism in a war against Judaism and Christianity or Catholicism. That's a reality, whether we want to accept it or not. And there is a truth to the fact that if you say to me, I'm at war, if I say I'm not at war with you, but you're at war with me, guess what? We're at war, whether I want to be or not. Please continue.
Our rabbis taught, thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart.
I don't care what's gone on. We don't hate. Shlomo Karlbach beautifully said, I only have one heart for love. I don't have two hearts. Okay? I am very clear. Hamas must be destroyed, not defeated, destroyed, and we'll talk about why and what that is. But I do not hate a Hamas terrorist. Because let's be honest, every one of those guys who did those atrocities on October 7th, they were born innocent. They never had a chance. Okay? I realize what needs to be done and I cry about it because it's sad to me. Okay? We do not rejoice in that kind of thing. Go on, please.
And he shall judge among the nations, and shall decide for many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, nor shall they learn war anymore.
Lo yisagoy goy cherav, lo yimadu od milchama. We sing it every Shabbos. We are not looking for victory. We're looking for this kind of prophecy. By the way, do you know what part of this prophecy is? This is the time when the Messiah will come, when the temple will be rebuilt. You know, we can all accept that anything built by man will be destroyed by time or other men, right? Nothing physical lasts forever. There was a first temple that was destroyed. There was a second temple that was destroyed. There's a mosque. It will be destroyed by time or by something else. And there will be a third temple built. But it says very specifically about that third temple, it shall be a temple, a holy place for B'nai Adam, the children of Adam. It does not say B'nai Abraham. It will not be a place just for Jews. It will be a place where everyone comes to go and worship God. Realize that's the second part of this prophecy. Please continue.
We don't want wars even when we win.
Golda Meir, who has so many amazing quotes.
And if you go to war in your land against an enemy who oppresses you, then you shall blow an alarm with the trumpets, and you shall be remembered before the Lord your God, and you shall be saved from your enemies.
Has anyone seen any of the videos videos of IDF soldiers before they're going into war? Have you noticed what they're always doing? Singing. They're praying. They're singing. Shir l'malo, Esaina harim. You know, I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where does my help come? It's always about, we announce what we're going to do first, and we are very clear about it's about prayer. Our greatest ally in Israel is not the Iron Dome. It is not the U.S. and the 16 F-22s they just sent to Israel. Our greatest ally is God, and as long as we remember that, we're okay. When we don't, we're not. Please continue.
When you go forth to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God has delivered them into your hands.
It's really interesting that Judaism does not say if you go to war. Oh, I thank you. Oh, I love it. So I have to tip your waiter really well.
Don't forget to tip.
He'll be here all week. Thank you so much. So, this is the beginning of a Torah portion in the book of Deuteronomy. It doesn't say if you go to war, it says when you go to war, because we do go to war. The Torah is very clear that there are times to do this. Okay, it's not a question of if, but when. Please continue.
When you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God gives them into your hand, and you take them captive, our masters have taught, one good deed commandment brings about another good deed commandment, and one transgression brings about another transgression.
In other words, when you go to war, don't do the wrong thing. Show them what the right thing is. That's how you make friends. Again, Rabbi Karlbach, it was either the 67 or Yom Kippur War, I'm not sure which. He went to the Knesset. And for those of you who don't know Rabbi Shlomo Karlbach, he had a synagogue up in the San Francisco area. He called a lot of musicians. He called them his holy hippies. And this was back in the 60s and 70s. And he said, the Knesset, you have the best army for war in the world. You need an army for peace. I want you to bring 50 of my holy hippies over here. Pay for us to come over here, for them to come over. We're going to knock on every Arab door, and we're going to say, we want to play for free at your Simcha, at your joyous event. How much peace would we have had the Knesset said yes? Where would we be right now if 40, 50 years ago, Arab families got a knock on the door from these Orthodox Jews saying, I understand you had a baby, we want to play music for free for you to have fun. How much better would we be at? And we need to remember that. We need to keep in mind lest we become who they are. Who wants to continue reading? Someone else. Next piece, the piece. Who wants to read? Somebody.
The peace is more important.
Loudly.
What?
Loudly.
The peace is more important than the conflict, and so there are people specifically forbidden from taking on certain conflicts so that a circumstance doesn't arise where the war is won but the peace is lost.
This is really interesting. Part of our laws around war revolve around who can go to war. Because you want people going. This is very appropriate right now because there's a whole dialogue or whole debate going on in Israel, how many of you know about this, about drafting the Haredi. These Orthodox yeshiva boys who they want to draft them. Do we really want to draft them? They're not going to be very good and they don't want to be there. So do we really want to draft them is one of the questions. But this is an interesting take. The Talmud specifically talks about this. Please continue.
When a man has taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war, nor shall he be charged with any business. But he shall be free at home 1 year and shall cheer his wife whom he has taken.
Newlyweds have a lot of exceptions, exemptions. A newlywed cannot go to war. Anyone else know what a newlywed cannot do? Who said it? Well, they can fast, but they can't fast on Yom Kippur. They're not allowed to fast. It's not the no food. It's the no showering. We don't want newlyweds to get disgusted by each other's smell. We want more babies. Okay, and it's like, oh, you smell bad. That doesn't go off so. Please continue.
In Parsha Shoftim in the book of Deuteronomy, we're given 4 additional categories who are specifically forbidden from protesting, going to war. He who has built a new house and not dedicated it. He who has planted a vineyard but never harvested it. He who has betrothed a wife but not married. He who is afraid and disheartened. My emphasis, you must not protest in sorrow, but only in passion and joy of serving God.
So, 3 of those 4 categories have something in common. If you've started something that you haven't finished, that's a life-altering thing, you got to finish it before you go to war. And the 4th one is, we don't get depressed. And if someone is so depressed, we don't want them going out. Because they're going to, what's depression like? It's a virus, isn't it? Oh, it's so bad.
Oh, yeah.
We have no chance. The last thing you want is someone who's depressed who's going to go, oh, we can't win. Oh, why are we doing this?
So,
Right?
Rabbi,
Yeah.
if these are some of the guidelines,
Right.
are they discussing these as the guidelines of whether or not to draft the Haredi?
No, but they should be.
Right.
But they're not. Partially because it's not. Remember, Israel is a Jewish state that is not a religious state.
Theoretically.
No, practically, it's not. It's not a religious state. Okay, you. There's no law that says your store has to close on Shabbos.
Right, but in this time, in this very unique time, and it's very unique, shouldn't they be at least discussing this?
You would think they should be, but they're not. I mean, the Haredi are. They're saying we're forbidden. Because
Like here's Rabbi's handout.
but it's not. No, it's not part of the discussion. Remember that Israel was built by non-religious people in terms of the government structure. So, Ellie, you were going to say something.
I probably wasn't paying attention. Where in there does it say that the Haredi should be?
It doesn't say the Haredi should. It gives you categories, but if a Haredi is, it doesn't say that a scholar isn't, but if a Haredi is engaged, can't do it. If he's a newlywed, can't do it.
That's for everyone. It doesn't make a difference.
Correct, but they get engaged and married a little earlier. They would figure out ways to get around. It's just not part of the discussion. For better or for worse. Please continue.
In Judaism, it's imperative that we only go into conflict not for our own benefit, but for God's. The idea is to eliminate our desires from the equation and instead only go to war, as we must always do against Amalek, for Malchut Hashmayim, for the kingdom of heaven. This ideally prevents us from killing lives in order to acquire stuff.
Okay. Go ahead, finish it. Go ahead.
All right, long. It also is designed so that we are concerned with peace, since that is obviously what God wants for His creation, as opposed to acquisition of money, land, power, etc. By placing ourselves as warriors for peace as opposed to warriors for acquisition, it changes our internal reality. We view our opponent as an opponent, not an enemy. As soon as we have hate in our hearts for our opponent, we lose the entire purpose of conflict, which is higher resolution that is inclusive and done in the name of spiritual purposes.
We don't go to war for stuff. There's not one war that you can point to where Israel was trying to acquire anything. Okay? Let's be eminently clear. If Israel wanted to acquire Gaza, Gaza would still be part of Israel, wouldn't it? Right?
Been done by October
They didn't have
15th.
to acquire it, they already had it.
Yes.
They already had. They wouldn't have given it away in 2005.
Right.
They had it. Okay? We don't go to war for stuff. We don't go to war for land. We don't go to war for those things. We go for the sake of heaven. And even today, in a secular state, we still only go to war for the sake of heaven. Israel does so much to avoid war that every other country would just attack or retaliate, and we don't. Please continue.
It was on this account that the people involved in the matter of the concubine at
Loudly.
What?
Loudly.
Oh. It was on this account that the people involved in the matter of the concubine at Gibeah were punished. For the Holy One, blessed be He, said to them, Ye did not protest for my honor, yet ye protest for the honor of a woman. All conflicts must be made for the sake of God, not for the sake of human concerns. Our earthly benefits cannot be the reason for our wars, only for the sake of heaven.
Okay, so that particular instance is, could the Trojan War happen in Judaism?
Never.
No.
Not, right? Couldn't happen. You're not going to war over a woman. Nothing personal. Corinne, with the
That's
exception of
what marriage is for.
with the exception of you, this is like a machitza here. All that. Just put a curtain. So you don't go to war for money, for lust, for love, even for you don't. That's not what we have go into conflict about. Please continue.
Rabbi Gamaliel was traveling in a ship when a huge wave arose to drown him. It appears to me, he reflected, that this is on account of none other but Rabbi Eliezer Hyrcanus. This takes place after an occurrence of conflict between Eliezer and men of the great assembly led by Gamaliel. Thereupon he arose and exclaimed, Sovereign of the universe, thou knowest full well that I have not acted for my honor, nor for the honor of my paternal house, but for thine, so that strife may not multiply in Israel. At that the raging sea subsided. Gamaliel's conflicts against Eliezer were for a spiritual purpose and to prevent further spiritual conflicts, not for personal gain, or as an expression of the strength and power.
It's really important to understand. There was a law case. Gamaliel was the head of the assembly. The decision was made that was really harsh on one side, and Gamaliel was then on the ship. There's a storm, but then he prays, I didn't make the decision for my own benefit. I did it so there wouldn't be disputes within the state of Israel, within the people of Israel. Okay? That's a worthwhile thing. Shalom bayit, peace in the house. It's so important. Who wants to continue reading? Somebody loudly, go.
We must not tolerate our opponent, but must accept our opponent and their perspective, and even treasure it. We can think them wrong, but not evil, until they have demonstrated that they are Amalek. As soon as we identify our opponent as evil,
I'm going to go over Amalek a little bit.
as soon as we identify our opponent as evil and an enemy, there can be no peace. It is through conflict that is done without vilifying the opponent that a higher truth and understanding is reached. Jewish value is not victory, but peace and greater understanding.
This is so important. To disagree without being disagreeable. To attack someone's policies without attacking them personally. I don't care if you love Donald Trump or love Kamala Harris. I don't care if you hate either one of them. You cannot say either one of them is Adolf Hitler. Okay? And people have been saying that for years. Donald Trump is Hitler. Barack Obama is Hitler. George Bush 1 and 2 are Hitler. How many we've seen that, right? All over. None of them compare. Okay? You want to say he's wrong, he's right, I disagree with this, I agree with that. Fine. But none of these guys, except Hitler, are Hitler. And there, by the way, there are people in our culture who idolize and want to be Hitler. There's people like Nick Fuentes, there are people like this, that this is what they want. And so you can make a comparison, but the reality is that we don't attack the person. That's not what we do, because that's never going to lead to peace, right? If I disagree with Mark, and I say, look, this is where I disagree, and we have a passionate dialogue, that goes to one place. If I disagree with Mark and I say, you know what, you are just a blankety, 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 blank, as if I say what David says to you, then we don't have the same, where are we going to go from that? Other than conflict that's just going to keep building, 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 building. We can't do it. That's not the Jewish way. Okay, again, the one exception is Amalek, which must be destroyed. But we don't get into those arguments. Okay, and how do we identify Amalek? Please continue.
You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall reason with your neighbor and not follow sin on his account.
Pretty self-explanatory. Go on.
You shall not loathe an Edomite, for he is your brother. You shall not loathe an Egyptian, because you were a stranger in his land.
And we were at war with the Edomites, and we were at war with the Egyptians. But we didn't loathe them. Okay, we didn't hate them. We did what we had to do without hate in the heart. Again, I love Karl Buck's comment. I only got one heart. Go on, please.
Rejoice not when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles.
You know what? I don't know how many times I've had this conversation with different people since October 7th. We go in, we destroy a Hamas base, we destroy a Hezbollah base, we do whatever we do. And people act like it's a football game or a baseball game, don't they? It's like the Dodgers Angels. Yay! Someone died. And even if they were evil, if they truly were evil, they weren't born that way. Someone died. That's nothing to cheer about, ever. And here's the problem. The moment that we are cheering for the death of this guy who just recently died from Hezbollah, who was replaced by someone equally as bad or worse, okay? The moment we cheer that, oh, look, we got him, yay, it took 2 months, we had this bomb, yay. The moment we do that, we are no different than those people who were dipping their hands in the blood of Jews and putting them on windows. We are no different than the people screaming in the streets of Tehran who are screaming, yay, the Jew died. What's the difference?
A lot of the comments I read.
Loudly.
A lot of the comments that I read in, like, the Jerusalem Post or Times of Israel, unfortunately, they display that behavior of joy for the dead, which is contrary to the lesson here.
We got to do what we got to do. But the moment I cheer that someone died, my enemy died, the moment I got to do what I got to do. But the moment I cheer for them, I am no different. And they have won the real war. Because what's always the real war? With our own evil inclination. And the moment that I'm cheering that someone else died, I have surrendered to it, haven't I? Doesn't mean we don't do what we need to do. It does mean, God forbid, we are ever happy about having to do it.
So is there rejoice then in the Amalek?
No, there's not even rejoicing in Amalek. Not even rejoicing in Amalek. Again, you do what we're going to get to Amalek. You do what you got to do, because Amalek's not about being defeated. Amalek's about being destroyed. And there's a difference. But we never rejoice, because then we lost. Where's the difference between the guy who rejoices over anybody's death? Okay? Did that guy need to be killed? I have no question about it. No question. However, I'm not happy about it. Better, he should have had his heart softened like Pharaoh and said, you know what, Hamas, let's go make peace with Israel. Right? That would have been better, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So, there's nothing to rejoice on. Please continue.
Holy One, blessed be he does not rejoice in the downfall of the wicked. Have I any pleasure at all that the wicked should die? Saith the Lord God, and not rather that he should return from his ways and live. And similarly, Rabbi Yohan said, what is the meaning of that which is written? And the one came not near the other all the night. The ministering angels wanted to sing their song, for the angels would sing songs to each other, as it states. And they called out to each other and said, but the Holy One, blessed be he, said, the work of my hands, the Egyptians are drowning at sea, and you wish to say songs. This indicates that God does not rejoice over the downfall of the wicked.
I have since October 7th, it's been really important to me to keep this story right in front of me. The story is that the story around this is that the Egyptians followed the Hebrews through the Sea of Reeds, and as we know, they all drowned, right? And the angels start to sing hymns of praise, and God stops them. That's so important, isn't it?
God stops.
There's nothing to rejoice about. They had to be destroyed, didn't they? Right? They had to be destroyed. But we're not happy about it. And they were clearly evil in terms of what they were doing, but we're not happy about it.
They're all God's children.
Everyone, everything. Exactly. Please, actually, who else wants to read? Who wants to read loudly? Loudly. Go for it. Loud. You might need lights.
Maybe it'll be better. It's only through the dialogue between opposing points of view that a greater understanding can be achieved. As such, a real peace. This is so clearly and beautifully illustrated in the story about the tragic ending of the lives of the great sages,
Thank you.
Rabbi Johanna and Rish Lakish, I guess that's what they say, also called Bar Lakisha. The story of these sages who throughout the Talmud were fighting with each other over Jewish law and understanding is truly tragic and teaches us two important lessons. The importance of the opponent, to never slander other opponents, even if it is true, in an attempt to win a conflict.
So I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to make it easy.
Yeah.
There's these two rabbis, Yochanan and Reish Lakish. They are brother-in-laws. They're dear friends. So let me tell you what happens. Yochanan was said to be the most beautiful man that he could loathe. Long hair down to his tochas. It was beautiful and a great sage. Reish Lakish was the king of the highwaymen. He was in charge of the mafia of the area. Okay, he was the godfather, so to speak. He sees Yochanan. He sees this being in the river, and long dark hair. So he thinks he's going to go out and take some of that. Okay, you know what I meant by that. Okay. Just making sure if you weren't clear, bada bing, bada boom, but not with mutual consent. He goes swimming out. And Yochanan turns around and goes, whoa, wait a minute, right? Reish Lakish says, your beauty belongs to women. Yochanan says, your passion belongs to God. And if you commit to God right now, I will give you my sister as a wife, and she is more beautiful than me. Okay? Reish Lakish, in his heart, totally turns, totally makes tshuva, and he becomes, in that moment, he totally lets go of all this past and commits himself to God. So much so that he doesn't have the strength to swim back. The Talmud, which is not linear, the Talmud is filled with dialogues between these two men. Reish Lakish becomes a great sage, one of the great sages. And then they get to a point, and they're arguing. There's a discussion about when a knife is kosher. There's when the knife, you're making a knife, and at what point is it a butter knife as opposed to a knife that's a dagger, right? And one of them says it's at that moment when it comes out of the flame, and one of them says when the water tempers it. And they argue. And then Yochanan brings up Reish Lakish's past, and he says, well, you would know you used to be a thief. Now I got a question. Does bringing up the past ever work?
No.
Okay. How many of us are married?
Oh.
Or have been? Right? Not a good idea. Right? Yeah. So what happens? Reish Lakish says, there I was called the rabbi, the leader of the mafia. Here I'm called the leader of the Sanhedrin. What are you doing insulting me in my past? And Yochanan says, well, I have the right because I taught you. It's not going to work out well, is it? No. And they end up not talking to each other. And as a result, ultimately Reish Lakish dies. Yochanan is miserable because Reish Lakish, he doesn't have a sparring partner anymore. And so the rabbis say we're going to send other rabbi there to comfort him. And so they send a very wise rabbi, and Yochanan makes a comment, and the wise rabbi says, Yochanan, you're right. And Yochanan makes another comment, and the rabbi says, Yochanan, you're right. And Yochanan says, what the hell do I need you to tell me I'm right? I know I'm right. With Reish Lakish, I would pose 24 questions. He would pose 24 other questions. Together, we would start to understand the infinite because it's more than just one perspective, right? I am seeing the table from this side. You're seeing it from that side. But together, we can see a much rounder, wholer vision. So, Yochanan goes crazy. He's screaming, where is Reish Lakish? Where is Bar Lakisha? The rabbis pray for him, and he dies. Okay? We need to have conflict, but we need to have it in the right way. Please continue. Please read.
In Judaism, we're come down to glory.
Yeah, in Judaism, the purpose of conflict.
Judaism, the purpose of conflict, war of any sort, is to arrive at a deeper resolution. Peace that is consonant with Jewish values of seek peace and pursue it. Psalm 34:14. The conflict must be for spiritual purposes, the kingdom of God, and not for personal gain or goals. It is a Jewish value that no person has the ability or right to define another person as evil. None of us are that are known.
So there's a lot of stories about someone who was perceived as evil, and then after he died, we realized he was actually a hidden tzaddik. He was doing righteous things all the time, and we just didn't know it. Okay, go on.
If we view that our opposition as evil, it gives us permission to do whatever is necessary in order to defeat the evil. And we become Machiavellian and lose our values and ethics. Again, the exception is Amalek. But even then, we must not allow ourselves to embrace our own Yetzer Hara when destroying is so wrong, it's a new word, Amalek.
So, again, it's always the same thing in Judaism, isn't it? All these teachings are all the same basic issue. We don't rejoice in it, ever. We are willing to disagree without being disagreeable. We are willing to have dialogue and not debate. We are committed to those kind of concepts. And that the goal of war is to have a successful peace. That's what it is. And it's very difficult. Wow, I insulted Mark. He actually left the room. Where did Grossman go? Right? So it's really, really important. Who wants to read? Continue at the bottom of page 4.
In every conflict that Jews have been involved in, we find that it is for the sake of heaven and in order to pursue a real peace. The Hasmoneans and Bar Kokhba revolt of ancient times, all the way through the Warsaw Ghetto revolt and wars in modern Israel, have all been based on this concept. In the few exceptions to this rule, such as Saul, etc., we find that not only is the war lost to the Jews, but there is no resolution, peace that results.
Every time, there are only a few times that we have actually started it, never ended well. Okay, it's a great example. So I'd like you to shake my hand. Stand up and shake my hand. No, shake my hand. Go ahead, shake my hand. Can't shake a hand with a clenched fist. Golda Meir's quote. Okay, Golda Meir's quote. You cannot shake a hand with your fists clenched. You've got to open them up to each other. If you don't do that, it's not going to work out. Please continue.
The moment that we view our opponent not as a creation of God with a legitimate point of view that we disagree with, but view them as an enemy, true peace becomes impossible. We must open our hearts and our hands and view our opponents as teachers from whom we can learn and whom we must respect. Otherwise, our arrogance of being right leads us to actions that are antithetical to real peace. Let us all view those who disagree with us as wrong and work together to achieving a greater understanding and experience of the divine through conflict and subsequent peaceful resolution.
That makes sense to everyone? So that's why the IDF is the most ethical army in the history of the world. That's why. Because we value this kind of concept. There's a man, it doesn't, some of you actually know, but there's a man as a friend, and he served in the IDF, and many nights he actually is forced to drink himself to sleep. Why? Because in one of the wars, there were two soldiers who had little children in front of them. And one of them threw a grenade, killed some of his battalion, and he shot the other soldier. And in order to do so, he had to shoot through the human shield that soldier was using. And he has nightmares constantly of that little girl. He blacked out at the time. That's who we are. We are not committed to war. We are committed to peace. You know what the difference between us and Hamas is? Between this kind of, they are devoted to death. We are devoted to life. We are devoted to hope. They are devoted to despair, to pain. And that leads us to Amalek. Now you notice that we've talked about all this, but that there's a glaring exception, Amalek. And let's talk about that. You want to continue reading about Amalek a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
One
Nice,
exception,
he's got a nice loud
Amalek.
voice.
And the Lord said to Moses, "Write this for a memorial in a book, and recite it in the ears of Joshua. For I will completely put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven." And Moses built an altar and called it the name Adonai Nisi. For he said, "Because the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." Exodus 17:14-16.
Go on. Say the next one too, please.
Remember what Amalek did to you and remember you say this every day. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you were coming out of Egypt, how he met you on the way and attacked your rear ranks, all the stragglers at your rear. When you were tired and weary, he did not fear God. Therefore, it shall be when the Lord your God has given you rest from your enemies all around in the land, which the Lord your God is giving you to possess as an inheritance, that you will blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. You shall not forget. Deuteronomy 25:17.
Okay, so who is this guy Amalek? We're supposed to blot out the remembrance of Amalek off the face of the earth. God is to be at war with him from generation to generation. We're to emulate God. We're to be at war with him. Now let's be clear. In the Tanakh, in our scriptures, everybody who asks gets forgiven. King David stoops a married woman, sends her husband off to die, he's forgiven. Let's be clear, because he asks and he really makes tshuva. Amalek's not. Who the heck is Amalek? Well, it says it here. The Hebrews are coming out of Egypt. Okay. The Hebrews come out of Egypt, and Amalek attacks them on their journeys from behind, where the old, the sick, the weak, the women, the elderly are, the children are. That's a perpetrator. You cannot heal a perpetrator like that. Okay? Rabbi Elijah Shulchan wrote an amazing book called Amalek, the Enemy Within. Talks about that the Amalek inside is the perpetrator inside ourselves. It's actually the root of all addiction, is the Amalek within. Because what's an addiction? It attacks you at your weakest spot. Okay? Now, what do you do with an addiction? I don't want to call anyone up, but I know some of you are in a 12-step program of some sort, so if you are and you feel comfortable, what do you do with an addiction? Can an alcoholic have one drink? Nope. Coke addicts have one snort?
You work on yourself so you don't need to
You work on yourself, and you don't. Amalek is the one that says,
Have this drink. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. Isn't that cool?
right. Amalek's the one that says, you know what? Mary.
No.
See that guy? He's cuter.
Yeah, he is.
That's her second husband.
More money, too. Don't make a comment. Amalek's the one that says that. Amalek's the one that comes up and says, do you really want to be with a fisher like that, or do you want a man? He could kick my ass, but nonetheless, right? This is Amalek. Amalek is the one that seduces your addiction. If you're an alcoholic, that one drink won't matter. Okay? If you're a sexaholic, that other person doesn't matter. If you're greedy, you know what? It doesn't matter what you do. You're getting more money. Whatever the addiction is, right? It's Amalek is the perpetrator. There's a whole book about it. It's called Amalek, the Enemy Within. It's a brilliant book by Rabbi Shulchan. It's called Amalek, the Enemy Within. It's by Rabbi Shulchan. Amazing piece about the Amalek, the Enemy Within, the addiction. Amalek is the perpetrator that attacks the weak part. The weak is pointed inside us. The weak points outside. If you had asked me on October 6th what we should do with Hamas, I would say anything we can to create peace. Even knowing that in their charter, they have committed to our destruction of the entire people. Even knowing that their words have said that, even knowing that they have been very clear with their intention, I would have said, had you asked me on October 6th, whatever we can do, if we can make peace, we need to. On October 8th, the answer is destroy them.
That's not.
What? And the reason I said it is because what do they attack?
I don't want to rethink it or sound it, even though it demanded it.
It's okay.
Like you'd have said whatever it takes, but that's not true. I mean, it's like
that is true.
Well, to the extent that they were making demands, I assume, of Israel, the Israeli government was responding, but not necessarily willing to do whatever.
No, 5 times. But that's not true.
Just because they said
that's not true. 5 times between 2005 and October 7th, Hamas asked for things. Right. Israel said okay, and they still said no.
Right.
So it wasn't. They've always said they were never interested in land, their destruction. But the idea is to make peace. On October 7th, after that, they're Amalek. They've established their Amalek. If you asked me 2 months ago, and people did, what I think should be done with Hezbollah, I said this to people. We should figure out, evaluate what we need to do to create peace. They're not Amalek. They went and killed 13, 14 kids in a soccer field. You crossed the line. And when you cross that line to being Amalek, there is no coming back in our tradition. Okay? There is no coming back. It is, and it's easy to say, well, they're proxies for Iran, or they chose to do that. Hamas chose to do what they did. It was not unconscious. They were videotaping it. They had planned it for a long time. They had every intention. There is a place that is so dark and evil that it is evil. There's a 47-minute film composed of film footage from Hamas's Go cameras.
So once again,
there's a 47-minute film. Okay? Yeah. It was a film about Dr. Gorka was talking about. There's a 47-minute film, and there are scenes in it, as well as other scenes. There's a family of 4, and they throw in hand grenades. The parents are killed. The children are young and are screaming. They have no eyes and no ears, and so they're screaming because they can't hear. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you see? I can't see. I've got no eye. And before they go and kill those kids, they go to the fridge to take a soda. Okay? That's crossed the line you can't come back from. In our tradition, that has crossed a line. When someone goes and takes and kidnaps two people, a couple, and with the girl's phone videotapes the killing of her boyfriend and then other guys raping her on her phone and then texts it to her mother, you cross the line that you cannot come back from. When someone takes a dull garden hoe and beheads someone because they just keep bludgeoning them until eventually the head falls off. When someone goes to take that family, most of us have seen Gingy, the little baby who turned a year a few months ago, right? They went out specifically. They didn't go to war with the soldiers. They went out to go to the weak, the old, the young, the defenseless. That's Amalek. They crossed the line. But if you ask me, and people did, December, January, February, what do we do with Hezbollah? We destroy Hamas and we try and work it out with Hezbollah, so they don't want to get destroyed too. But they crossed the line, didn't they? We are always at war with them. Yeah, go ahead.
I was watching, someone sent me a link to this young Jewish influencer, Zach.
Loudly,
Zach Sage Fox. He went to the West Bank, and he had to pretend he is Italian in order to do interviews. And he was asking people questions about, what do you think about the situation? Do you think Hamas killed kids or murdered people? And they all said no, without exception. He was almost beat up by a bunch of men because he was asking a woman a question, and the brother came by and said, you cannot ask her questions because this is not allowed in our culture. And the cameraman had warned him, if things like this happen, we have to get out of Dodge. They get out of Dodge. They went and asked the same questions in Tel Aviv and asked the people, so what are we going to say? Hey, if we can have peace, we should have peace. So the dichotomy here is the Jews looking for peace and love. Not only Hamas, but the Palestinians in West Bank.
I won't use the term Palestinian because there's no such thing.
The Arabs in the West Bank. They were all against anything peaceful, and they did not believe that what Hamas did there was anything wrong with it. Up until then, I was like, okay, you know what? We should get along. We should figure out a way to make things work. But someone once told me, none of them look for peace. None of them are there that want peace. And we're not going to have peace. So they all have to be removed from that.
So we're going to get to because you're saying blot them off the remembrance of the earth.
No.
That's what I'm looking to happen. Now we're going to get to that in a second. I want to tell you it's very
hard for me to say that.
It's very hard. And we should cry.
I can't.
It's against everything we stand for, but we need to cry about it.
Like a virus.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me ask you, cancer we cut out fully, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. How many have heard of Joseph Mengele? Everyone heard of Joseph Mengele? You're not sure, right? The head doctor, right? Holocaust, who was so truly evil, he filmed the crazy experiments he did on Jews. He filmed it because he and Hitler thought the world would be grateful. So does that sound similar to Hamas and they're wanting to GoPro, right? And he filmed cutting apart twins and trying to sew this half from this twin with this half of this twin together. This is the kind of crazy stuff right now. Have you heard of Candace Owens? Candace Owens. Candace Owens, 2 weeks ago, actually said, this is a fake tape. This never happened because why would anyone do this? Okay? It's crazy, it's dangerous, but the reality is we need to understand what Amalek is. Now, the next part I'll tell you the story as opposed to going through the text. King Saul fights the Amalekites, and he is commanded to destroy everything of the Amalekites, everything of Amalek, down to their animals. Okay? And he does it. And the Midrash actually says, and Samuel comes to him and says, you know, you were commanded to do this and you didn't do it. And Samuel goes and kills the king of Amalekites, bless you, beheads him himself. And Saul, he says, you are losing the kingship of Israel because of this. This is how important it is to destroy Amalek and their animals. And the Midrash says, Saul replies, what the animals do? The answer is, well, God is commanding you to do it. And then it goes on what they did. So, I'm going to say that, let's just say for argument's sake, who wants to be, well, we'll do it differently. So I'm going to use you again, Mark, because you walked out because I so insulted you, I guess.
We just needed alcohol.
Oh, there we go.
Amalek was talking to him.
So,
You have to replenish.
Mark's walking around with a good-looking, beautiful animal. He's got a goat that just is. This goat is the goat. This goat is truly the goat. This goat is, you know, this goat is so beautiful, spectacular in every way. This goat glows. Right? I say, hey, Mark, where'd you get that goat? And Mark says to me, I got it from Amalek. When we killed the Amalekites, I got the goat of the goats. Okay? And what's my next question? I'm a child, let's say, or younger. I don't remember Amalek being killed. Really, Mark, who was Amalek? Who were these Amalekites? Why did you fight them? How did you defeat them? What was so bad with them? How come you got their goat? Okay? So what has happened? Well, to blot out the remembrance, right? Except now, he's going to say, well, let me tell you about Amalek. Amalek's memory is kept alive. You both have lost someone recently. I don't know what was said at the funeral of your father-in-law. I do know what was said at Saba's funeral. Well, I know some of what was said. We stay alive because of the stories we tell. Right? My children, thank God, have had dreams with my mother, my father, my grandmother, and my brother, all of whom died before they were born. Because they've grown up with the stories of their Uncle John and their grandma and grandpa and their great-granny. Okay? As long as we tell stories of the dead, they stay on, right? We teach that. We've all heard that, right? So as long as there's that good-looking goat of goats. I love that you picked that up. I didn't even think about it when I said it. I'm so glad I didn't say a cow. As long as that goat is there, the story about Amalek continues, doesn't it? Okay. For this, but Saul says the goat's innocent. Yes, the goat is innocent, and yet the goat must be killed. It's part of the Amalekites, must be destroyed. It gives me no pleasure, it gives me great pain to say this. I have no doubt that there are innocent people in Gaza. None. We all agree on that?
Yes.
We need to blot out the memory of Hamas. So that someone doesn't say, tell me about your family. You say, well, you know, you've met my mom, you've met my dad. I had an uncle, Abdul. I don't really know him because he was killed. He was a member of Hamas. Really, what's Hamas? You do not negotiate with an addiction, do you? Ever. You do not negotiate with the Amalek within. You do not negotiate with the Amalek without. They are to be destroyed. Would someone please continue? Yes. Yeah, loudly, but you gotta ask loudly.
Yeah, two questions. One is, how do you know
Loudly.
if that's true and you need to kind of blot out the memory? At what point, this is just kind of a pragmatic question, at what point does the war stop? And the second thing is, how do we get to the Candace Owens of the war? I mean, it's like, even if you're going in tomorrow, completely eradicate, morally or
Loudly, go on.
morally or otherwise, Gaza. What about the countless hours in Texas?
Well, those are two very different questions.
Can you repeat what he
Say it loudly. Come in and say it loudly. Loudly. Yeah, loudly. What was the first question? Loudly.
The first question is, Israel is at war. If the end is to eradicate Amalek, including blighting the memory, how do you know? How do you get to that endpoint? What's the point at which you cease the battle?
You can't.
Okay, I'm asking in real terms. It's like, should we
No, but that's the point. You can't.
Okay, then that gets to the second question.
Wait, that first one is you can't. But
Okay.
the first step is to eliminate the Amalekites, isn't it?
Okay.
That's the first step.
And at that point, what happens?
Okay. Then it becomes anyone ever talk about other than in this kind of conversation? How many of you in your daily conversations talk about Amalekites or Edomites? Canaanites?
Termites.
Amorites?
Termites.
Termites. Exactly. We don't talk, right? They're there. We remember them vaguely, but they're so far back in the memory. Look, most people don't even know what the heck the Whig Party was. Okay? And that's 150 years ago? Give or take, right? It's the first thing you do is you got to destroy what is there. Okay. Now the second question becomes, what do you do with the idiots who keep worshiping?
Stop it. What happens then when you know that there's more work to do? So
You keep doing the work. Does anyone know anyone who has an addiction issue? Okay. I'm gonna make it easier. Does anyone know anyone who has an alcohol or had an alcohol? No. So anyone know who is an alcoholic? Does anyone know anyone who's an alcoholic? Do you suddenly get sober and it's never a problem again?
You constantly have to work at staying sober.
You got to work at every moment, right?
every day.
Josh, want to say something?
Yeah, I'll be 25 years sober in about a week and a half.
Cool.
And I've been going to meetings and helping other men for 25 years, and it's a daily reprieve, and it's a spiritual sickness that requires a spiritual solution. Period.
That's your answer. No, but wait, hold on. That is the answer. So first, that alcoholic's going to have to stop drinking, right? I mean, got to sober up in terms of not having the substance anymore, right? Well, okay, alcoholic's got to be destroyed. But then it's a daily practice. Okay, it's a moment-by-moment practice. So you ask the question, what do you do with people like Candace Owens? I had that conversation with just the other day, with a very prominent Republican, because she's Republican, she's very conservative in theory, a very prominent Republican strategist who's worked with 5 presidents. Okay, he's been in the political world since Nixon. Okay, and his answer was, we talked about what to do with her and Nick Fuentes and Jake Shields, all the same crowd. And he said, we need to make it clear they're not part of the Republican Party. We need to make it clear that kind of anti-Semitism, that kind of hate for Israel, that kind of hate, period, has no place in the Republican tent. Now, that was from a guy who goes back and he worked with Nixon, he worked with Reagan, he worked with Trump. Okay? The guy actually has a tattoo of Nixon. It's the most bizarre thing. No, he has a tattoo of Nixon on his back. Which is, it's okay. So very, very, you're talking Republican establishment, right? And his answer was, we need to make it clear that's not acceptable. Well, that goes on for a while. You know what? Those people aren't going to try and be part of that tent. But it's a day-by-day practice. It's calling out someone when they say, you remember Amalek? You remember Hamas? Boy, was Hamas good, weren't they? No.
Yeah, I don't want to monopolize this because I'm not really not presenting a position. I'm struggling with this.
As we should.
And my struggle is, I get it. I get the concept of Amalek, and I'm there.
Loudly.
And I'm all there. Now, with somebody who's alcoholic, there's a point at which mom and dad say it's okay to come home, and I don't know. I can't find a way, listening to the news or listening to the party, either parties. I can't find a way in my own heart to say, what's the point at which I say, okay, and to who do I say it?
Who else is wrestling with those kind of issues? Hopefully you're not. What I'm trying to say is, hopefully all of us are. Yeah. Wait. Okay. What he said is that he's wrestling with the issue of, on the one hand, and correct me if on the one hand, he gets it, needs to be destroyed, done. On the other hand, at what point do you say, okay, come on, you're forgiven? Let's. I don't know. But the point is, look, we're all wrestling with issues like that, aren't we? If you're not wrestling with what's going on in the world, then you're not thinking. Go ahead. Loudly.
Golda. It's at the point that they love their children more than they hate them.
Which means.
When they get to that point, it's all over. It's done. It's a paradox.
But how? When do we know that that's true?
If they say so.
They might say that now. We love our children. We want them to become martyrs. Go ahead.
Isn't it always going to be a battle? At what point? It's never going to not be a battle.
What is the name of our people?
You don't get to go home. Ultimately, you create as good a home as you can while continuing the struggle.
Come on, Sal.
How long are you going to let that struggle happen? And how many loved ones or ones that you don't know are other people's loved ones are you going to let die because of this belief that we're going to struggle with it and help them out?
Look,
let's go back.
We need to struggle. That's our point.
Let's go back to World War II. Germany and Japan. The worst thing that could happen were the atom bombs. And the blanket bombing of Germany by UK and US. Many innocent people died. But if those acts were not committed, how many more do you think would have died? And do you think this world would have been the way it is today?
So let me ask you a question. What is the purpose of war?
Depends on which side.
No. What is the purpose of war? What? What is, from our perspective, it's not about victory, it's about peace. But what? The act of war. There is a purpose. There is a good thing that comes out of war. It's so ugly, people want peace. Right? It becomes so horrific that one or both sides say, enough, this is Meshuggah, why are we doing, right? If it's not ugly, why are they going to stop? Okay? Whoever heard of you're at war with Hamas and you're going to let thousands of quote-unquote humanitarian aid trucks in? I'm sorry, but that doesn't work, does it? Because then war isn't so ugly that they want a peace. Because they're not seeing their children. They don't. It's bad, but it's worth it. War is supposed to be ugly. Otherwise, there's no reason to stop it. This war has not been so ugly that Hamas and Hezbollah want to stop it. It could have been. Absolutely could have been. There's a lot of reasons it hasn't been. Okay? And that includes, and the primary reason is called the United States. So just as a side, Israel needs the United States not to win the war. Israel needs the United States to win the peace. Because when Israel goes to war, the whole country shuts down and goes to war. Okay? So it needs to come back. So let's move on a little bit with this. Because it is, we should be wrestling with it. If it's easy, something's wrong. How can it be easy for me to be a compassionate human being and say this person?
Hey, that's why I'm a rabbi.
Yeah, well, you know what they say about good rabbis, right? Someone asked the rabbi, why do you rabbis always answer a question with a question? The rabbi said, do we? Right? It's I'm not, here's the answer. The answer is the text, but it calls upon us to wrestle. And again, if you use it as the model of addiction, you understand. Again, how many people know people in addiction? It's a day-by-day fight, isn't it? A moment-by-moment fight to not succumb to that addiction. It's a moment-by-moment fight. To say, I got to do this, but I'm not going to be happy about it. That's wrestling. That's why we are called Yisrael. One of the reasons. He who wrestles with God. It's supposed to be troubling. I am concerned over anyone who has no trouble in these issues. Because it's just not that simple. It just isn't. I got one heart. I can't hate. And yet I know what needs to be done. Let's continue reading. If someone could please read. This is a blinking flashlight. Okay, so we are on page 7. Can we start? I'll start what it says and someone can continue. And Rabbi Judah said, 3 commandments were given to Israel when they entered the land. 1, appoint a king. 2, cut off the seed of Amalek. There's a certain one as well, but you have to build a temple. But one of the first commandments we are to do is cut off any seeds of Amalek. If you want to build a kingdom of peace, you can't have cancer in it. That is reality. But it is also reality that is terrible and horrible and tragic. And they are all true. Someone please continue reading.
And Solomon sat on the throne of the
Loudly,
king.
loudly.
And then Solomon sat on the throne of the king of the Lord as king. Yet I still do not know which of the other 2 comes first, the building of the chosen temple or the cutting off of the seed of Amalek. Hence, when it was written, and when he giveth you rest from all your enemies round about, etc., and then Scripture proceeds, then it shall come to pass that the place which the Lord your God shall choose is to be inferred that the extermination of Amalek is first.
Who's ever built a house or remodeled a house? It's the first thing you did if you're building a house. Foundation. You're building a community. Do you allow in Amalek? Now, Amalek comes in a lot of forms. Gossip is a form, right? Twice this has happened. How many of you know my wife? We all agree I married above my station, right? Fastest way to get people to agree with me. It's like everyone, no one has ever said, ever. No, really, no one.
Can't wait to meet him.
They can vouch. True? Okay. And everyone agrees so quickly. Twice this has happened. Someone made comments about my wife to other people and it got back to me. Now, we can also agree, by the way, those of you who know it, I got the best looking Rebbetzin in the country. Objectively, right?
My daughter-in-law.
I don't even talk. My wife is not, most Rebbetzins are 5x5. I got the hot yoga teacher. Okay? Right? I mean, that seems Jewish. I mean, what else could you? No, it's those. Mark, true?
Yes.
Don't say it so easily. So, right? Twice this has happened, the same type of thing. Women who are maybe a little zofted, so maybe there's some issues going on between them, have made comments to other women that got back to me that so-and-so is saying your wife's skirts are too short. Now, those of you who know Allison know that Allison dresses very modestly. Okay? Because she is aware that she's a Rebbetzin. You were not with us when you were on vacation. None of you were invited. Okay? Because then she would not dress the way she dresses on vacation, which I appreciate as her husband. So, you know, and they made it. And same exact circumstances twice. I went up and I said, you know what? You don't get to talk about my wife. You don't get to talk about anybody. And this got back to me. And it's Lashon Hara, evil tongue. You don't get to do it. Okay? And in both cases, they kept doing it. And in both cases, I said the same thing. You know, there are a lot of temples. You need to go find another one. Okay? You need to find another one. And I would have said that if it wasn't my wife as well. It's just, it doesn't usually get back to me. This got back to me because it was her. Why? Because you can't build a foundation. You can't build a community that's holy, that's sacred, that's a kahal when there are people gossiping about each other. So if you look in our mission statement, okay, if you look online about what the temple is, part of our ethics in our mission statement is we don't accept gossip. You want to gossip? I can point you to a couple of temples in Thousand Oaks. They're happy to have you. In fact, they encourage it. Okay? So, lots of places, right? It's like, no, you can't build a home if Amalek's in the home, can you? You can't build a nation when Amalek is in the nation. Okay? Now, if you ask it loudly.
Okay.
Okay, so where it says that the males of Amalek should be killed and no seed should be left, is that, if Hamas is Amalek, does that mean we need to kill their children?
Unfortunately, yeah.
All of them. So
According to this.
So if we do genocide,
That's not genocide.
if we kill the evil that exists through Hamas, then does Gaza revert back to Israel?
Yeah,
So what
but
you want to know? Okay, well, hold on. She's asking. You're asking a different question. Okay, you're asking. One question is, according to this, do we kill the children of Hamas? And the answer is yes. Wait. And that is profoundly painful.
Yes. Goodness.
It doesn't take away the pain.
No, I agree. That I struggle with.
And that's we need to struggle with it. God forbid we don't.
I mean, I understand.
So I'm gonna ask you back a question. This man we talked about earlier, should he have killed that girl to stop the grenade?
Yes.
No choice.
Who put the girl in danger?
Not him. No, I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying that it's a struggle.
And it better be a struggle, because God forbid it's not.
But then, so if we do this, which is necessary, and I'm not arguing that point, then what, as a Jewish nation, do we do with Gaza?
Now, that's a whole other question. I actually have given a proposal and been discussed. Senator Roger Marshall was taking around the idea that of a third nation, 3 states, of having a 3-state solution. So Gaza, there's precedent in the athletic federations. There was a Gaza Amateur Athletic Federation from 1964 to 1983. They did not compete as Palestinians, and there was a separate nation. Gaza could be paradise. It is some of the prime beach country in the world.
It was.
It was.
Okay, it could be again. It could be Singapore, but not as long as it's tied to Iran and Hezbollah. And all right, let's continue reading. Please continue reading at the bottom of the page.
Rabbi Elazar said, "One who becomes compassionate to the cruel will ultimately become cruel to the compassionate."
Say that again, because this answers your question too.
Will ultimately become cruel.
No, say that one line again.
Rabbi Elazar said, "One who becomes compassionate to the cruel will ultimately become cruel to the compassionate, as it is written, and Saul and the nation spared the God and the best sheep and cattle. And it is written, and Nob, the city of priests, he smote with the edge of the sword."
Saul did. All these, let's have peace and sing Kumbaya, demonstrating on college campuses. Have they, we're being compassionate to the cruel, being compassionate to Hamas. Right? What has ultimately happened? They've beaten up, in some cases more than that, terrorized Jewish students. They've become cruel to the compassionate. We should wrestle with it. If we can't wrestle with, if you can just stand on the side of saying, we need to kill them, and there's no wrestling, that's inconceivable. And if you can stand on the side and say, let's just forgive them and be nice and sing Kumbaya, that also is just as unforgivable. We need to wrestle. This is part of our tradition. It's Judaism. There's a professor at HUC who made a great comment. I spoke to a friend of mine, and he related to me. That Judaism is not about making you feel good. It's about making you live better. Making you a better person. Yeah.
So here's the thing. What if after all the struggle, you come to the determination that what's stated in the liturgy must happen?
You end up like me. I cry every day. And God forbid I don't. And if I'm so busy I'm not in touch with that, I'll go watch a video to make me cry. Because otherwise they win, don't they?
Yep.
The moment I can stand in this position of saying, enough, carpet bomb it all, make all of Gaza into glass and ash and fertilize the earth with their ashes and screw them, is the moment the Yetzer Hara won. The moment that I can go to that place without hesitation, without pain, is the moment I have lost my soul. It's horrific. Let's go on to page 8. Let's continue reading. Let's continue reading loudly. Who wants to read? Loudly. Who's going to be loud? Oh, you got to come up here. You're way back in the back. The camera can't get you.
All right.
Here, I'll do my Vanna White impersonation.
Oh. Okay.
I'll sit on his lap in the meantime.
Amalek is the one who consciously and with intention attacked the ancient Hebrews from behind.
Wait.
Where the weak, young, old, and infirm were in the camp. This is the one thing that cannot be forgiven and must entirely eradicated and destroyed.
Not defeated, destroyed.
How important is it to totally destroy Amalek? Saul is deposed from his kingship for not entirely destroying Amalek. Amalek is any perpetrator that consciously attacks the weak. Internally, that may be an addiction. As a result, the only way to conquer an addiction is to destroy it completely. You don't give an alcoholic even one drink. Similarly, cancer is an internal Amalek that must be entirely destroyed. You cannot leave even one cancerous cell, or God forbid, the cancer may return. Amalek is the one instance where God does not and is not willing to forgive forever. We are commanded to destroy Amalek entirely without compassion. Otherwise, we will find that in being compassionate to the cruel, we become cruel to the compassionate. And we must always remember to find no joy, even in the destroying of Amalek, as we must remember the teaching of Midrash Megillah. Even the soul of Amalek was born pure, and we must mourn that loss of a soul that becomes unredeemable. Hamas and Hezbollah have demonstrated that they are the modern embodiment of Amalek. Is Iran? What should we do, and how should we treat the opponents and enemies of Israel?
Thank you. So these are.
I have a question.
These are the questions. This is the real issue, isn't it? Come on.
I was reading an article.
Loudly.
I was reading an article about how.
I'll make you come up here, loudly.
Slightly. You're not scaring me about that. I'm not afraid to step up. Okay, I was reading an article yesterday about Sinwar and their mission is, quote unquote, based on their Islamic according to Islam, and that is they're fighting to make the whole world ready for the next coming. That's what their belief is, and that's why they're fighting so much. With them quoting religion as to why they're fighting, and we quoting religion as to why we're fighting, what makes the difference between it just.
Okay, so here's the difference.
That's a great question.
It's a great question. Here's the difference.
Good luck.
Every time you're behind me, I look up for the raccoon.
Like last time, huh?
Some of you remember a number of months ago, I'm standing here, someone's behind me, and all of a sudden I feel like there's water. A raccoon peed on me. No, and it was like her water burst. It was a lot of pee. I was wearing a jacket. It was like soaked. But I digress. So, and that raccoon was not Amalek. So, here's a big difference. In the charter of Hamas, the Covenant of 1988, which you can Google, it's very easy. Google Covenant of 1988, Hamas, Avalon, because that's an easy translation. It multiple times says that the goal is to obliterate every Jew, period. Our goal is not to obliterate them. Our goal is not to kill them. The exact opposite. When Sinwar sees a Jew die, he rejoices. That's A difference. B, a teaching on Islamic theology. Okay? And it's not from the Quran. It's from the Hadith. There's something called a waqf. W-A-Q-F. So, Judy is very kind. And she donates $4 million in cash to us to buy a building. Thank you, by the way. You know, so she's sitting like this, like, no way, Rabbi. All right? And we build a building. Okay? And it's called Judy and Ken's temple. You know, the Judy and Ken congregation, whatever.
Judaism.
No, you go very clever. Another one. I'm missing all
That's
this.
a good one.
But I'm setting people up. That's good. So now, 100 years later, that temple merges with another temple, and they sell that building that you had paid and given $4 million for. Okay? And she gets merit in the kingdom of heaven for having done this good deed. Everyone with this? Okay. She did great tzedakah. The building is sold. Does that take away her merit? No. Waqf is an entirely different concept than it is an Islamic concept. Abdullah sits there and he donates money and he builds a mosque. If that mosque, and he gets his place in heaven as a result, that mosque merges and gets sold to a senior center, Abdullah gets thrown out of heaven. Okay? Anything, and that not just a building, but if Abdullah bought spoons for the kitchen and those spoons are ever used for something else, Abdullah's thrown out. It's called waqf. Think about this for a minute. Any land that has ever been, according to the right of waqf, any land that has ever been dedicated to Allah is always Allah's, or you have pulled my ancestors out of heaven. Say that again, because we're going to put it in perspective. At one point, all of that region was controlled by Islam, wasn't it? It is not today, which means according to the right of waqf, all of those descendants of those ancestors who were involved in the Crusades and were involved in conquering that whole world, they're not in heaven until we get that land back, according to the Islamic right of waqf, which is quoted multiple times in the Covenant of 1988. Do you understand the pressure that puts on someone? So Judy's grandchildren, oh, my grandma was such a righteous woman. She was so holy, and she built this temple. Again, thank you. And she built the temple. And now her grandchildren are saying, those rat bastards just threw my grandma out of heaven. Not only her grandchildren, but her great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren are saying the same. There was a rabbi, he's no longer at this temple, at the temple I'm referring to, but there was a rabbi who did an interfaith service, and this was right after the Paris bombing. And he was having, as part of the interfaith service, an imam come up and do an Allah Akbar prayer to be ecumenical. And I blew up at him, this jackass, excuse my language. Because he sat there and I said, what are you doing? That's a dedication of Allah. There's 1,000 other prayers. No, I want to make sure that the Muslims feel comfortable. I said, you're dedicating where the Ark of the Covenant is to Allah forever. What the hell are you doing? Last time I would get involved with anything interfaith in terms of their interfaith association. I do a lot of interfaith work, which is not with that association. It's like, how can you do that? His answer is, well, I want them to feel good. And no one really knows what the prayer means anyway. Well, you know what? Everyone who's a Muslim knows what the prayer means. It's not okay. It's a different theology, right? It's a different theology. So hell, we are where we are different is we want peace. They want our destruction. Okay? We want them to love their children more so we can have peace. They want our children dead. And that's still the guy on the street who does whatever, says, I want Jews dead, is an Amalek. He's not Amalek. Amalek is very specific. You only can identify someone as Amalek when the time comes that they have crossed that line that you cannot come back from.
We don't see Amalek.
We always know. We never see. Never. We do everything to try and justify people not being Amalek. When you see it, when it's clear, then you got to fight it. Then you got to just not defeat it, destroy it, and you got to cry because you just do.
So do you call
a nation Amalek or the leader? Is Sinwar and Nasrallah Amalek, or is all of Hamas and Hezbollah?
Well, it's an interesting question. Sinwar and Sinwar clearly is. Nasrallah, because of what they did in soccer field, clearly is. But they're not a nation.
Right.
Okay? Hezbollah is not a nation. Okay? Hamas is not a nation. There is no Palestinian nation. There's no such thing as Palestine. We've talked about that before. There is no historical Palestine. I don't like using the term Palestinian. That doesn't exist. Okay? And a pig can call itself a turkey all day. It's still a pig.
So call it a cult. Is that still
A cult? No, it's a group. It's a group.
okay? So that group needs to be annihilated because they are.
Needs to be destroyed. And remember, Amalek was a nation.
Right.
Lois.
Putting myself in that environment, how do I know?
Lally.
Putting myself in that environment, how do I know who's who? They don't have purple skin. They may not be pointing a gun at me, but that doesn't mean they're not teaching their children to kill my people.
Which is
including in the United States.
Which is why Amalek must be destroyed,
But how
including
do you
its
find
animals. We just said, when it's clear that they're attacking children, weak, old.
So all we can do is respond.
Yes.
How do you kill them all that way?
Yes.
Hopefully, they don't get to that point. The people who did those demonstrations on college campuses are not Amalek. They're horrible. They're anti-Semites. They're Jew haters. They're horrible, but they're not Amalek. They haven't crossed that line, have they? They haven't attacked the children. They haven't attacked the weak in that way.
The term anti-Semites. Aren't we all Semites?
Yeah, but that's why the anti-Semites. I've stopped kind of most of the writings I do, because I do a lot of writings that we don't send out to the temple. Most of those writings, I don't refer to people as anti-Semites. I refer to them as Jew haters. Okay? Because that's, I think, a much more clear. And Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs said it beautifully. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Does this make sense to everyone? So, what do we do? What do we do about Iran?
Cut the head off.
Wait a minute.
We annihilate them.
Well, wait a minute. Iran has not attacked the children, have they?
Well, they tried.
Indirectly.
Didn't they try?
Send their
Indirectly.
guys.
Hang on.
Go ahead. Wait. Hold on 1 second. Go behind you first. Go ahead.
If I give you a stone and you throw it at someone and kill him, and I tell you to throw it at someone and kill him, isn't it my fault for giving you the stone to throw it at someone and tell them to kill him?
In Judaism, but did I tell you to go throw them and kill the children?
Someone. It doesn't matter who.
No, there's a difference. There's a qualitative difference in Judaism. If someone attacks the ancient Hebrews from the front, are they Amalek? No. Are the Edomites Amalek? No. Are the Egyptians Amalek? No.
But Iran indiscriminately fired 300 missiles that were picked off.
Okay,
so
wait a minute. But there's a difference, isn't there? Indiscriminately is different than targeting the weak.
But the weak, obviously.
But there's a difference. Go. We're going to go back to you. Don't worry.
In this case.
Oh, Kessenbaum's getting up. He's going to say something.
In this case, Iran gave them, Iran told them to go and do this. So they did. It was their fault.
Is it? Did they tell them that? These are questions. I'm not giving an answer. Go ahead.
How many people here have friends who are Iranian?
Yeah, I'm Iranian.
Okay.
Well, wait.
Okay.
Didn't we admit it?
Okay.
Wait,
When you say Iran, you're talking about when Iran was run by the Shah, they were a friend of Israel. The people who are in charge now, which are a very small minority, could be eventually equivalent to Amalek, but it's not all of Iran. And what needs to be done is that those people need to be overthrown and thrown out. And so it's the leadership, the bad seed that is currently running Iran. It is not Iran.
So
your
family is still over there. Your family's still over there, don't you?
I have some family there, but not too many. But in continuance of what I was just telling the lady.
Loudly.
I was telling the lady sitting here, I don't know her name. I said, I'm Persian American Jew. And
that's okay, because Hebrew, we go from right to left. So you're a Jew.
Whatever, however you want to do it. But the rabbi knows where my heart is with Israel. And I said, look, when Iran sent missiles the first time, what we should have done is bombarded the mullahs, the parliament, and that would have created an atmosphere for the majority of the Iranian people who are poor, dissatisfied, and hungry for them to rise up and have a revolution. And that's what they're waiting for. The opportunity was there in 2009, never happened. The opportunity was there 3-4 years ago to continue with the sanctions, never happened. So the problem is, all right, I'm independent but I lean Republican. Every time there was a Democrat,
you fall far.
I'm center right. But every time there was a Democrat that was a president, they really screwed up the Middle East. Started with Carter, then the Obama, then unfortunately with Biden now. He's doing. Here's the thing. Look at the actions. Forget the words. The actions have all been. A lot of it.
But let's stay out of the Democrat-Republican dialogue.
No, I'm just talking about actions.
But let's go back to Judaism.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Because the answer you just said is the leaders, the mullahs of Iran, Amalek? Very possibly. Are the people?
No, the people are not. The people are innocent.
We don't know. Okay, we don't know. Are the people of Hamas? We do know. We do know, don't we? Okay, we do know. So there's a qualitative difference. Remember something. When they did have that brief ceasefire with Hamas, people from Gaza were in the south, and they said, we're going to be, they're sending flyers, and there's going to be a ceasefire. Do you know what Hamas did? It sent out flyers and announcements and loudspeakers and everything else to all of the Gazan citizens, to the women specifically and their children, saying, you are unarmed Hamas warriors for Allah. Go back up north to your home and guard the tunnel entrances. That's right. And if you die, you will be a martyr and go to heaven. When was this? This is when that brief ceasefire that we had, hostage exchange. Oh. This is like 3 days before. When we know it's going to happen, it's going to start on the Friday or whatever. That's okay. And you know what happened? Tens of thousands of these mothers started going back up north with their children until they were stopped by the Israelis. Because they were going to sit on a tunnel until they were killed so that the press could say, oh, look, the Israelis are killing poor innocent women and children. But Hamas called them exactly what they are, unarmed soldiers. Okay? So we need to be honest about this. But that's different than Iran. But it's not necessarily different than the Iran leadership. You don't call someone, you do not attribute Amalek to them unless it's eminently clear, because God forbid we're wrong. God forbid. So, I mean, the Houthis, they're sponsored by Iran, right? The Houthis are doing the same thing, but they haven't gone after the weak. They've been going after everybody indiscriminately. They've not targeted the weak specifically. Go ahead.
I'm going to beg to differ with you.
That's okay.
Innocent
Come back.
Women and athletes and young people that have been killed on purpose. And those are the weak people. So, you know what? The regime is
the regime, but not the people.
No, I'm not. No, the people are innocent. The regime is
So, do you guys see what the point is?
Those are the facts.
5 more minutes, I promise we're done. Because I always try to end at 9. I know I'm a couple minutes. So the bottom line is, look, the goal of war in Judaism is not victory, it is peace. With the one exception of Amalek, which must be destroyed, which we're careful about. God forbid any of us aren't wrestling with this. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. We're not wrestling. We're not being Jewish. So I hope this was valuable about this. Please register for High Holidays and get it done, so we can get people and be generous when you do. And again, I hope this is good. Take the handouts with you guys. Thank you guys very much for all this. So you're going to turn that off. I'm going to say one other thing.